So in this session today, we have about 40 minutes together, a little less than 40 minutes. I am going to, I know it's not a great amount of time to really do a deep dive into critical thinking, but I am going to share some information about immersing your classroom or your schools with critical thinking and critical inquiry experiences. And with that, pairing some digital tools to go along with that. So you may not be familiar with Jamboard, but it's a tool that we use in all of our sessions, in all of our meetings. It's a great tool to use, but it's also a really great tool for classroom engagement and classroom management, and allowing for students to really participate in a way that's active and initiating their critical inquiry. So I am going to actually put a Jamboard link into our chat, and we're first going to start. I would love to get some background knowledge to see where you're coming from and your knowledge of critical thinking and your understanding. And so if you click the link in the chat to access the Jamboard, the question is, what is your working definition of critical thinking? And are you all able to see my screen? Are you able to see my Jamboard or just the slides? Okay. And maybe if you show of hands, does anyone need me to show you how to use Jamboard?
When I click on the link, it's asking me for access. I have to request access.
Let's see.
We've been having issues with that. Anyone with a link can open it. I've had several this week.
Oh, really?
And it just, even like editing access, open to anyone, it's not working.
Okay.
Anybody else seen that this week? I don't know. Maybe it's just us.
It looks like someone was able to access it. Someone's in there. Try the new link that I just put in the chat.
I'm in there, but it's view only.
Okay, I'm in now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, view
I'm
only.
gonna do this one more time. Is it still view only?
Nope. You got it.
Okay, good.
Working.
Okay, so answering the question, what is your working definition of critical thinking? And all I really mean by that is, what is critical thinking to you? Maybe just throw a couple of words on the page, choosing a sticky note and sharing your thoughts. Take 30 more seconds. questions that go above retelling and recalling. That's great. And a deeper knowledge. Evaluation, questioning content, constructing knowledge, creation, using resources and tools. Using strategies to help accomplish a goal. Nice. Using the opportunity to assess failures to come up with new ways to solve problems. Yes, that's great. I love these shares. So the definitions that you've gave, or the ideas that you've given, what we'll do now is to decide how well your definition matches the definition that I've chosen here. There's so many official definitions of critical thinking or critical inquiry, but this one was pretty all-encompassing of the components that I'll talk about today. Thinking through of a problematic situation. So really starting with a problem or a question that you have, a problem to solve, on what to believe, how to act, to where the thinker makes a reasoning judgment that reflects competent use of the intellectual tools for quality thinking. So someone said using the resources that you have. That's great. So just if you want to jot down on your notes, or we don't have to do this publicly, but think about how your definition that you provided relates to the definition that has been given here. So there are three types of questions. The first type is essentially factual recall. There's a definitive right answer, and this is something that you can look up. You can do research. You're essentially researching this information. The second type of question is personal preference. How you feel, what would you desire, what would you prefer? And these can be linked back to the content that you're teaching. And then the last type 3, is there's a need for some form of inquiry, some form of curiosity, investigation to come up with a reasoned solution. There's more than one right answer, but not all answers are good. So this is critical thinking. This is really looking at the quality of the answer, the depth of the thinking, and comparing that to the alternatives. So these are the three types. In the critical thinking, we're really working towards the type 3, needing the inquiry, needing the curiosity and the drive to really dive deep into the content. So looking at promoting a critical thinking classroom, what are the components? We are shaping the climate to support thinking. We're creating opportunities and planning for experiences for their thinking, building capacity to think, teaching them essentially how to think and ways, tools to use to engage in deeper thinking, and providing guidance for that. So keeping involved along the way. Some of the components that are included or involved in that are the background knowledge, providing the background knowledge, assessing where they are when they first come into the classroom, and filling any gaps that are needed. The criteria for judgment, so determining what is the criteria, what makes this a good answer, what makes this a quality answer, or quality reasoning. Looking at the thinking vocabulary, so what does supporting evidence mean? What is bias? What does that mean? What does that look like? Diving into that as a class or with the students. Proof, we ask for proof. What does that even mean? What does proof mean? So really covering that vocabulary, the thinking vocabulary, the thinking skills, and creating clarity of what that means and what they're striving for. Thinking strategies, ways to make a decision, the diagram, maybe a pro-con chart, and then habits of mind. So thinking independently, being empathetic, paying attention to detail, having student agency, drive for learning, that intrinsic motivation. So the habits that they're employing in their learning. So this is again from the Critical Thinking Consortium. And I'm going to stop here for a minute so that you can either take a picture of it or jot it down in your notes. But this is a really nice framework to use when developing critical thinking experiences in your classrooms and schools. Starting with the big idea, the concept, the central question that students will take away from the unit. Take it outside of the classroom to life beyond the course, and really nurturing engagement in the community. So what is that overarching intent or goal? And then from there, you're looking at the critical challenge. What is the project? What are they actually doing that's going to drive the learning for the course? And what will be the accepted ways of learning demonstration? What's going to work best for the students? Maybe you bringing voice and choice during that time, having them choose how they want to present their learning. And then from there, looking at the questions or the key tasks that are going to move them in that direction. The tasks that will enable learners to respond. So supporting them, scaffolding them in that experience. And what are the requirements, the constraints that you're going to set in place? These are some of the inquiry conditions in the classroom, and how to frame the day and the schedule. Further into the inquiry conditions for critical thinking or critical inquiry. Framing tasks and questions that problematize the content, creating a problem or issue that's really engaging them and pulling them into the experience. Involving students and shaping questions to guide their inquiry. Teaching them how to be the questioner, developing the questions themselves, giving students ownership over the directions of their investigations, critically analyzing and not just retrieving the information, looking at the deeper, the level 3 questioning, assembling multiple resources, looking at alternative perspectives. That's bringing back the empathy into that. That's an interesting and pertinent part of critical thinking. Explicitly teaching the tools to students, and using the content as disciplining and informing the thinking. So take a look at this list, and one tool that we use, it's called, you may be familiar with it, start, stop, and continue. think about what you are currently seeing in your classroom or in your schools. What would you start to do based on this list? Maybe you're not doing yet. What would you stop doing, and what would you continue doing? You just think about it. It can be a personal reflection. If someone would like to unmute and share their thought, you're more than welcome to do that. What would you start, stop, and continue? Here's some additional conditions for critical inquiry, as opposed to simply just learning info about a topic. What I really like about this, one of the most prominent differences, is the type of thinking with the requirement of memory and skill in information and actually questioning the data and information. You're questioning it for the quality and relevance to the subject at hand. When you're just learning info about a topic, this is kind of the old school approach. You're just retrieving information out of textbooks or even off of the internet. But when you're asked to interpret it and assess the information and use their own reasoned conclusions to why the resources or why the information is valuable, that's really bringing in the critical inquiry. It requires questioning the data and information found. Here are some effective launches or activators of deeper and critical thinking. And you may, if you're familiar with project-based learning framework, this is a way that you can activate a PBL, much like activating a critical thinking or critical inquiry experience. Asking them to hypothesize, predict, speculate, using a pie chart, proposing 2 or more hypotheses. So not just asking them, what is one hypothesis, why are these 2 hypotheses, which one is better, which one would you use? Designing and creating, writing initial ideas, a museum display, critiquing and judging. This is a very important component of critical inquiry, being able to critique, able to judge, why is something better than the other, and which one would you use? Pulling in, someone said, the resources, pulling in the tools, knowing which one is the best tool to use. Ranking ladder, value line, so essentially creating a scale of quality. And imagine dreaming, bringing the creativity, and again, that student agency, really driving them into launching into those approaches. Nurture quality thinking by designing an effective overarching critical challenge. So we're going to look at critical challenges for a moment and what they're comprised of. So criteria for effective overarching inquiry. They invite students to explore an idea or issue that it's explored as broad generative or predictive powers, encourages exploration, supports nurturing of competencies related to the subject areas. An effective overarching critical challenge is essentially a performance task, an authentic performance task. So it stimulates life outside of school It has an audience beyond the teacher in the classroom. It requires students to demonstrate their learning through a performance of the creation or of a product. If you would add to the list, if you could add to the chat any ideas that you have to add to this list of performance tasks, maybe something that you've done before, something that you've seen done, or something that you would like to add to what you are currently doing. If you could share an idea in the chat, that would be great. Presentation in front of peers, that's great. Flipgrid. Yvonne, how are you using Flipgrid as a performance task?
Hi.
Hi.
We're using it in several different ways. They're posed a problem depending on the TEK, and then they solve the problem. So if it's for reading and they're doing like a fiction genre, they can either perhaps finish the end of the story their own way. If it's for math, they explain a problem, things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Lisa, you said a podcast using Synth. Can you tell us about what that is?
There's a tool that's called Synth or GoSynth if you Google it. And so some of our teachers have created a classroom podcast. And so the students share their learning at the end of every 6 weeks. And so they're kind of turning that into almost like a spiraling star review in some grade levels. And so again, they're just sharing what they learned. They're kind of summarizing their learning, and they're reflecting on how they feel about their learning. They're kind of evaluating how well they did and what they can improve on.
Okay, that's great. That's critical thinking in and of itself. That's beautiful. And then Tanya, creating an ebook using Book Creator. Do you want to share about that, or what that looks like for you?
Sure. Book Creator is a free app that teachers can actually create their own libraries. So once that library is created, the student can join that library and then be able to go ahead and create their own ebooks. It has an awesome layout so that a child may do a video and then embed it into a page, or audio and do that too. They can upload images, they can link to files, and then you post that, the teacher does, online. And it's just like an ebook that you would find in a Kindle or Amazon or Barnes and Noble, where kids can go to it and then read other student stories.
Great. Cool. Thank you for sharing. I'm writing these ideas down. That's great. Thank you. Lisa, Misty's looking for a rubric. Thank you for sharing the website, Lisa. That's great. These authentic performance tasks are endless. I mean, there's so many that you can do and so many ideas online that you can pull from. Thank you for sharing your ideas. So a question, a critical thinking inquiry question: how should we respond to our changing Earth? The challenge, this is an example of a critical challenge or a performance task, is to create a compelling multimedia message to the world to communicate powerful ideas and inspiring examples that will help us to respond sustainably to our changing Earth. You see that the challenge is really diving into those level 3 questioning, that the deeper thinking models, the creation of the multimedia message to the world. So that again brings in the empathy to the world. What is a message that would relate to them? What would they need to know? What challenges are others facing, and how can I help with that? So that's a huge component. Looking at some tools, you already know Jamboard, tools for critical thinking. And I'm just going to dive into some examples, and I can give you, we already started with the working definition of critical thinking, but if you click through this Jamboard, there are a few other examples of critical thinking challenges or questioning approaches that you can use and pull from. This one on slide 2, if you're still able to see my screen, the students are asked to determine which ones are evidence and which ones are conclusions. And then essentially sorting them into an evidence and conclusion column, and then creating a definition. What does it mean to be evidence, and what does it mean to be conclusion? So be a conclusion. So you're really diving in into that work. It's not just surface level. So then they could come in, you could essentially make a replicated Jamboard slide for each of the groups to work on, and they're all doing the same thing within Jamboard. Another intellectual thinking tool or approach is see, think, and wonder. So you're giving them an image, or this could be more than just an image. You could watch a movie, you could read them a book, or have them, use I taught kindergarten and first grade. So I'm thinking in that realm, but bringing in literacy into that, asking them what they see, what they think, and what they wonder about the specific image or media artifact. You can do that in Jamboard. You can do that, in many different ways. And then this one, lastly, for the younger grades, how might our families be similar or different? Just an example, recording 2 important ideas to support your thinking. So then they would just bring over the sticky note, choose the similarity or difference, and add their thinking to that. So these are just a couple very kind of basic ways to use Jamboard to initiate those critical thinking experiences in the classroom. The next one that I wanted to show you, and this tool is actually new to me, so I'm still kind of figuring it out, but Mindmeister, is anyone familiar with this? Oh, you are, Lisa? Okay, then you probably know better than I do. Yeah, I just came across it yesterday, but it seems like what I like about it actually is being able to link to other, like I linked, so this is a critical thinking mind map essentially, but I linked the Jamboard to the mind map. So I think that's such a cool technique. You can really, because I was kind of thinking, I was doing my own critical thinking, determining, okay, why Mindmeister, why Jamboard, can't you essentially do the same thing? But they're really complementary, and there are a lot of tools in Mindmeister that are not in Jamboard. Sharing it, I don't know, Lisa, maybe you would want to share some of the ways that you've seen this used.
No, I like you just said, the ability to link. Jamboard doesn't have that. And then the other tool that's similar is Poplet. But again, Poplet to me seems to be more for younger learners, whereas Mindmeister seems to be more appropriate for secondary kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm a fan of both, but I do like Mindmeister for the older students.
Great, thank you. So this is really, and it's free. I can always love a free tool. So the Mindmeister is really great. And then the last one that I wanted to show you, it's really simple, but I think it's so applicable and you can bring so much into it, but it's futureme.org. And you can write a letter to the future, write a letter to your future self. And I thought maybe we could just chat about how this could be used. I was thinking, think about your year, think about the past year, write a letter to yourself of something that you would do differently. So you're bringing in that critique, you're critiquing the year, you're kind of analyzing the past and bringing in the empathetic approach, the critical inquiry of what would my future self need to know. You're really placing yourself in someone else's shoes, in your own shoes, but in your shoes of the future. I thought that this tool was, it's like I said, it's just super simple, but a nice thing to just bring into the classroom as a method of critique, the critical inquiry. You're just thinking critically about what will you need to know in the future, and what are you learning now that is going to make your future self better. So we have, we've had a few new tools that were shared. Synth, Poplet, Book Creator. I have these tools here. Are there any other tools that y'all would like to share for the good of the group that we can talk about that now, add these to our lists of things to pull from, and then we can end a couple minutes early today.
I was thinking Adobe Spark and Canva when you went back to your project that you had them talking about the earth. I thought Canva is such an easy way for anybody to create really amazing graphics and presentations and infographics and things. And then Adobe Spark, I put the link for education. Yeah, me too. Adobe
Okay.
Spark lets you create short videos or posts for social media, or again, graphics and things, but it's so easy for students, or even me, I'm kind of graphically challenged, to create really nice ways of organizing your information. So you've done all the research about the challenges with the earth, and now you're putting it together. So those tools are really, really easy to use. And of course they're free. So that's always a
of course.
plus.
Thank you for sharing that. Adobe Spark, I'll have to dig into that. Does anyone else have any other suggestions? Tanya, Yvonne, Misty, anything that you've used or seen used that could be used to spark some critical inquiry? Whiteboard.chat, Thing link, okay. Toontastic, all right, wow. Awesome. Thank you. Bringing in start, stop, continue. Chatter picks. Oh, another iPad app. Okay. So I really hope that this was it's a short webinar. You know, we have like less than 40 minutes. I hope that it was helpful. I hope you gained something from it. I would love to hear your feedback. We have the session survey that I'll link to in the chat. But if you have any feedback to share with me now, just in terms of like what was helpful, what would have been more helpful in terms of critical thinking as we're planning for our professional learning sessions, the DTLN sessions for the next 3 months. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to get today that you didn't get as we plan for the future? I would love to hear. There's no boundaries, and you're not going to hurt my feelings. I just want to make these sessions as good as they could possibly be and most effective for the use of your time, sharing it with us. We're so appreciative of you joining, and yeah, if there's anything that you want to share, just feel free to either unmute yourself or throw it in the chat. We're always open and loving feedback. copies of the presentation. Yeah, I'm happy to share. Well, let me first, I'm going to put the survey link into the chat, and then I think I can just, I'm just going to put the link to the presentation in the chat if you just give me 1 second. And if you have any questions about anything, feel free. I'm actually going to put my email in the chat too. You're more than welcome to contact me at any time if you have questions about this. Okay, more access. And thank you for the collaboration. Thank you for the engagement, sharing all of your resources with me too. I'll definitely make use of them and continue to share. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your evening and the rest of your week. Best of luck to you if I don't see your face in other sessions in the next month or so. Best of luck to you as you close out your school year. Take care.